Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. We're going to discuss today the thing that will come up in your midterm exam, which is double line graphs, the analysis part. Why only the analysis part? Because you already know how to write a title, an introduction, and the conclusion for the graph chart, and it will be the same for any graph. However, the analysis part is the part that is different. Different for bar charts and different for line graphs. And for your midterm exam, you are going to get a double line graph to describe. So, what are we having today? Okay, so what should be included in the double line graph description analysis part? First of all, well, double line graph has two lines, right? So you need to talk about the overall trend and changes in both lines. Okay. Then you need to talk about major time periods and changes happening. Here you will use the language of change, increase, decrease, and stuff like that. Also, since there are two lines, you are going to compare them, and you'll talk about the similarities and differences. And also you use statistics, numbers to support or explain what you are writing about. Let's just dive into that. So here we have a graph. Take a look at this graph here. That's a double line graph. Think, what is it about and what is the purpose of this graph? You can pause the video and take your time and think about it. All right, so this graph is about demand for steel. Steel is a type of metal. Yeah, it shows the demand for steel and compares the amount produced versus actual demand. And it shows it in several months. Not several months, but well, it's the whole year. It's the whole year. But be careful because you see it says January, and the next one is April, then August, then December. So, but actually it's the whole year, right? And the units of measurements are million tons. Yeah, that's what we see. What is the purpose of this graph? Well, because there are two lines, it means that this graph compares. So the purpose is to compare the amount of steel produced and the actual demand for steel. All right, throughout the year, some year, we don't know which year it is. Okay, probably it's the average of several years. All right, so that's the purpose of this graph, to compare. Let's move on further. So you need to start your analysis with the overall trend. What does this mean? You need to look at the numbers in the beginning of the year, in January. Yeah. So for the amount produced, it was 4,000 million tons, and for the actual demand, it was 2,000 million tons. So you look at the starting numbers and you look at the numbers in the end, in December, in the end of the year, and you see whether these numbers increased or decreased. You compare January and December. January and December, right? You compare the beginning and the end, and that's the general trend. So you can see that for amount produced, it was 4,000 million tons. It became around, well, a bit lower than 1,000 tons. million tons. So the amount of steel produced shows a decreasing, downward trend. Yeah. Let's look at the actual demand. It was 2,000 in January, 2,000 million tons, and in December, it's also 2,000 million tons. So actually, there was no change overall in the actual demand of steel. Even though you see, yeah, the graph was going up, down, but when you look at the beginning and the end, you compare these values, there's no actual change. So that's what's called an overall trend. And of course, you use the language of comparison to compare the overall trend too. That's what we have. All right, my face is closing it. So here what we have. So the yellow line, the actual demand remained unchanged overall, and the amount produced dropped by 2,200 million tons overall. So that's the overall trend. All right, then we need to look at different periods of time because we have line graphs, right? We take a look at these graphs, and there are lots of things going on here. Yeah, increasing, decreasing, increasing, decreasing. But what we need to do here is to break it down into periods of time, so that's easier for us to compare, make comparisons of these two trends. Yeah, otherwise we'll spend a lot of hours describing all that. So what can we have? What can we have? So yeah, we can just break it down into these little ones, but it's going to be difficult to describe. So what we do, we first look at similarities. We look at both lines and where do these lines look similar? Actually, here and here. Why? Because here it's increasing trend in both lines, and here this part also looks similar. Yeah, first downwards and upwards and downwards. So we can talk about these two periods of time using the language of similarities. Okay, talking about similarities, and hopefully you know how to use it. All right. Then we look at the differences, and we can talk about this chunk, and we use the language of contrast. Is it the only chunk? No, these two. Yeah, this one and this one, they look different, or there are like major differences between them. Yeah. All right, let's just look at the sample. Here is a sample of analysis. Let's see what is wrong here, what can be done better. You can pause the video and read it, look at the graph, and see what is missing here. All right, hopefully you have paused the video, have taken your time to think. So what is wrong is, no, what is good? Let's talk about what is good. The good thing is here, there's a language of changes. So where can we see it? Increased, yeah, fell, again, increased, dropped, remained unchanged. All these things are good, yeah. A person who has written this analysis uses the language of change, which is good because we talk about line graphs. And there is some statistics. See these numbers used, which is great. What can be improved is just a second. there is no language of comparison. Since we have two line graphs, we need to compare them. Yeah, so only saying, okay, this increased, this decreased, this fell, this remained unchanged is not enough, right? You need to compare these two lines. And actually, there is some statistics, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient. It's used in some places, and then by the end, the person just gave up and said, okay, no, I'm not using numbers anymore. All right? So when you write a midterm exam, make sure you compare the line graphs, these two lines, and you also talk about the language of change at the same time. Well, that's it for now. Stay tuned for some more videos.